where business buying banter meets no BS reality. Get ready to dive into the world of buying and selling businesses without the fluff and fancy jargon. Whether you're a seasoned business buying pro or a curious aspiring entrepreneur, this is where the real talk happens. Because in business, there's no room for sugarcoating. Let's get down to the brass tacks.
What
there
is
she is.
Richard Parker
How are you?
in the house?
In the in the house. What's happening?
Oh my gosh. It's a big week. Let's talk about it, Richard. The news and all the employees in America are doing cartwheels because the FTC took a big step towards banning non-competes. What do you think about that?
Perfect. I mean, as long as they don't ban them for the right appropriate situations, which are almost always more relevant to the owner. I mean, unless an employee is getting ridiculous amounts of money for performing their job, you can't prevent someone from earning a living.
Yeah.
And of course, you at the same flip side is you got to prevent trade secrets getting out that they shouldn't be. So it's a little bit of a slippery slope, but on the whole, yeah, why should they be bound for it? Someone who's making an average income and you can't tie them down. That's wholeheartedly different than someone who exits their business for millions of dollars and you don't want them to compete with you.
Man, I got stories about my non-competes, which could take a whole show in itself. But good Lord, I had to sign them every loan shop that I worked at. And when I started on the job, I had to hand in my email list of my broker partners, my COIs, my customers that have been loyal to me through the years. I had to hand it in so their marketing department could send out mass emails on my behalf working for that employer, that bank. But then when I left, I couldn't call on any of them anymore because they claimed to own the list.
They own the list, yeah.
And then and then they would call my COIs and my broker partners, Richard, when I went to the next loan shop. And thankfully, people do business with people, I always say that, not the brick and mortar banks.
Right.
People do business with people.
And you can't stop them from doing that. You know, the only thing and why I alluded to is a slippery slope. If there's businesses that have a lot of trade secrets or certain algorithms, you get it a lot in the financial world where there's real deep insight into how they do their job, pick their investments, those type of things, or other tech type businesses or healthcare industry where, you know, the employee is really getting access as part of their job to legitimate trade secrets and secret sauces. There has to be an element of preventability for them to just take that and export it to a competitor. Because that's not only, it's not only not right, it shouldn't be legal.
Yeah, right.
You know, so
tell me
there is a bit of a soft, yes.
There is, but I was thinking, and of course, my disclaimer.
You're always thinking.
Right. And my disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. So for all our listeners out there, this is just my opinion. When you're buying a business today and there are key employees, and I checked a little bit further. So this new FTC ruling doesn't impact business acquisitions for significant ownership stake of at least 25% or greater. Right. But what about, Richard, the key employees? Because sometimes a buyer will go in to buy a business and the underwriter will approve it for financing because the key employees are going to stay with the business. And sometimes the underwriter will condition they want the key employee to sign an employment agreement and perhaps a non-compete. But if they're not greater than 25% owner in the transaction, that's null and void now.
Well, there's a couple parts of it, and I get that. Yes, as far as ownership is concerned, that's definitely makes perfect sense. As far as the employees and an underwriting requirement to have employee agreements, that's also can be reasonable, because if it's reasonable in the eyes of the underwriter, it probably makes sense for the buyer as well. However, buyers need to understand that the owner of the business with whom they enter this agreement cannot bind anybody else. So the agreement cannot state that employment agreements, that the seller is going to get employment agreements with certain individuals. They can't bind other people. And so that has to be negotiated between the buyer and the employees. Now, with the employment agreement, I don't necessarily agree with the underwriters in this case, because the buyer should be making the decision whether or not they want an employee agreement with individuals. They may sound good and happy. The former owner is happy with them. Well, what if you don't like them? What if you don't want them part of the team? What if they cause friction? What if there's office politics? What if they keep coming back to the old owner during the transition time and talking to the old owner and all these type of things? You should have the optionality to decide with whom you want to have employment agreements. And similar, non-competes could be part of it. If that's not allowed any further, well, that's just life.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, Richard, because working for various banks as I have through the decades of my career, I envision a lot of bank underwriters looking at each transaction in their own credit decision mind. And some banks may just pass on what is being proposed because they're not comfortable with it, or the bank's attorney's not comfortable with it. But then you could pivot and another bank may be comfortable with it. So again, my message here is you can't just assume the bank that you're first initially going to as a business buyer is going to be the best sourced bank project for you to buy that business.
Right. Yeah, and I think what buyers should understand is they read this information regarding SBA criteria, right? Of what do you call it? The SOP?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And what's in there. But that doesn't mean that every single bank subscribes to every one of those points in the SOP.
Correct.
This is the SOP. Buyers should look at this as this is the latitude that the SBA has allowed the lenders to operate within. This is the framework. But just because they say this bank, they say this is allowed, does not mean that a specific bank, first of all, doesn't mean they have to do it, and doesn't mean that they're going to do it. So this is like the global parameters, but you've got to interview and submit to various banks because things can be significantly different from one to the other. Generally speaking, the rates are going to be pretty darn close.
Right.
But other than that, it's not that it's room for negotiating. It's more who allows what within the parameters of that SOP. And so to your point of visiting with and vetting numerous banks, that a buyer should be doing that the same way an underwriter is going to vet a buyer.
That's right. And what's going in my head right now is the SOP is talking to me to say, hey, Richard, SOP, you know me. But but we don't know every bank's comfort level and their credit policies.
Exactly.
It's crazy, but
it makes it fun.
Makes it fun. So, all right. Well, that was the top topic of the week, I think, that we had to start off the show with. So let's get on with the real business here and share with everybody that you have been putting together this free webinar series for business buyers that want to network and learn from you, because you've got over 3 decades of experience helping business buyers find good businesses to acquire. And this webinar series that you have been putting on, I have been attending in the background in case there's any kind of asks about SBA, but the knowledge and the information that you have been providing to these aspiring business buyers has been eye-awakening. And the Q&A that you open up toward the end of the seminar has been incredible, because we're all hearing great questions from aspiring business buyers based on what lane they're driving down. And you've been providing feedback that's just been helping all of us get better at this process of buying businesses, because we have to learn from someone that's been doing it for 3 decades or more, not from someone that's been doing it for 3 months.
Well, I appreciate it. 3 decades just means I'm old. And that's the first thing as you talk about it, it's like, wow. And I started doing these because there's just so much darn misinformation and misleading information and erratic information and self-anointed gurus that have never even done what they're teaching people how to do, which is even crazier.
Mhm.
And so we've had terrific feedback, and I really enjoy them because it based upon the feedback, I know it's helped a lot of people, and it's real solid, real world information they can put to use immediately. And it's been very effective. Actually doing one tomorrow, which is just a Q&A, because we very often run out of time during the webinars. So the next one is May 1st. We're going to talk about some questions a seller will ask you and the seller's mindset. So we pick out a different subject and then do the Q&A. And it's been, again, really interesting. And it always, and to your point about the Q&A, besides the educational piece, it allows people that are in the market to buy businesses to network with one another and bring up some questions that are related to deals that may impact someone else. And it's amazing how relatable a question is from one person to a scenario that someone else is who's listening in on the webinar. And so that's been, it seems to be pretty powerful. Like, my best barometer is the number of people that keep signing up and how many, how many emails I get after each. I'm very complimentary, which is nice. I mean, I appreciate it. It takes a lot of work to put these together. And even though, I have years of experience, you can answer most questions off the top. It's still, tens of hours to get the presentation together. But I've really, really enjoyed it. And I know it makes a huge difference for aspiring buyers. And having you on there was great. We had a couple of situations arise, and maybe even tomorrow or next week, we'll come up with the non-compete. So I appreciate the compliment. I hope buyers join us, because it's very helpful, if I do say so myself.
It is. And here's the difference, ladies and gentlemen, with Richard. It's free. He's not asking you to join a community for the next 12 months and you pay 10 grand to be part of this business buying network to learn how to buy a business. He's doing it free because you always tell me, Richard, you're not in it for the money. You're in it to help people buy successful businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And some people may come across and say, "Oh, this guy, it can't be for real," but it is for real. And I make materials very affordable. We have materials that we sell. The vast majority of people who join the webinar for the first or second time end up buying the course because they say, "Oh, that, he knows what he's talking about," and I do. I don't have a laundry list of things that I'm really terrible at. My weaknesses are a lot longer than my list of weaknesses, a lot longer than my strengths. But when it comes to buying and selling small businesses, I know my stuff, and I'll say that with great pride and confidence. And this is not about selling materials. I don't sell boot camps. I don't sell consulting or trade ups to $10,000 or $25,000 program. The agenda for this is exactly what it's been from day one, related to our materials, which is just helping people.
That's right.
That's it. There's no other agenda there.
I feel the same way when it comes to helping buyers find funding through the SBA. I no longer work for a direct lender. And I truly believe, Richard, I was never a fit for working in a loan shop, because they just pushed, get 20 million, get 30 million, just go. And I'm like, wait a minute, slow down. We're dealing with an individual's future, and they're not buying a home. They're buying a business, which is probably 4 to 10 times greater than buying a home when it comes to price and financing. And we're rushing and we want more. My mantra always has been quality over quantity. Where in corporate, when you deal with some direct SBA lenders, some of them are just top performers because they're money hungry, and it's all about quantity over quality, which can really put a business buyer either in the wrong structure or just the wrong loan. And, there are loan shops that rise and fall all the time. So not only do you need due diligence on the side of trying to find the right successful business, you need due diligence to find the best funding that's going to make sure you're successful in the future, the near future.
Right.
I mean, yes. So, and I feel the same way. I mean, I've been in corporate for 3 decades. I'm right behind you. I'm not too far when it comes to age.
You look much better than I do.
Well, you look pretty in a bow on your head like mine. So come on, let's do that next time.
Don't even go there.
But I feel like our banter here, we earned the fact that we can banter from our heart, because that's where it's coming from. And where does that come from? Ups and downs and years of doing what we have been doing, and seeing mistakes and making mistakes ourselves, and seeing other people make mistakes, and the successes and the celebrations. I mean, that comes with decades of experience. That doesn't come with selling a $10,000 membership because I've just been doing this for a little bit and it's a passive income for me to make money on all of you dreamers out there.
Yeah, Deb, you and I talked a bunch of times before we ended up doing this show together. And the one thing that was completely evident to me is your heart is in the right place. I understand people who work for the loan shops. That's their business. It's great. But when you have a deep caring for someone, and how people, and concern about their outcome, which you do, and you combine that with an invaluable service, which is being able to aggregate all the noise and the misinformation for someone who's looking to acquire a business and put them in the right loan with the right lender. I mean, it's really it's a very noble career. And there are the naysayers, because we have so many people in this industry who don't know what the hell they're talking about, or buyers that are not willing to spend any money, or think they're the smartest people in the room, but they don't represent the majority. And they certainly are ones that I don't really pay much attention to, them or the programs that they buy. I've never read any of them. I just know the headlines and the bumper stickers related to the material is so full of nonsense. I just don't pay any attention to it. And when you do right by people, ultimately it wins out. I mean, ultimately. And
That's
so, right. Like for what you do, and anybody, that we've talked about that has the opportunity to speak to you about your advice and the work that you do and the consulting you provide, they're always blown away. And it's just testimony to the fact that you want to align yourself with the right deal team. That's it. And to get the right deal team always costs a few bucks, but you could do it economically. It's just understand what you're going to be buying. Like you said, you're making what could potentially be the largest investment in your life. And so if you're not willing to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and more experienced than you and pay for that type of work, then to me, I say, like, goodbye and good luck to you.
There you go. There you go. So back to your webinar, Business Buying Network and Learning Series. The last webinar and maybe the one prior, can you share with our audience maybe a good question or two in the answer that was provided? Teach us a little bit on what's being asked in these webinars.
Well, one thing that came up, we were covering the subject matter. We've done a bunch of different ones. People can go to YouTube and see all the prior webinars, but we were talking about questions to ask the seller. And most buyers will go through the usual thing. They'll spend a ridiculous amount of time going through the financials, which is sort of crazy because numbers are numbers. It's math. They are or they aren't. It's like I say, they is or they ain't, right? I mean, they're not subject to interpretation. The numbers don't lie. But it's very important when you're asking the seller questions and the stages of it. The first and foremost, establish a good relationship with the seller. Don't go in there like a bull in a china shop, bombarding them with questions or telling them all the things that are wrong about their business. Have empathy and establish a good relationship with the seller, because then you could typically deal with any hardships that come along the way during the deal if you have a nice, open and trusting relationship with them. But some of the questions that I tell people that they need to ask, which are out of the ordinary, are certain things, for example, about what keeps you up at night about the business. Because you want to be able to dig in, because if you ask a seller, what are the challenges in the business, they may not disclose. What keeps you up at night? Every entrepreneur that I've ever met in my life, a true entrepreneur, something always keeps them up at night about their business. And so you're able to find out from that, what are the potential problems? Because keeping in mind, what keeps a seller up at night about the business, and they deem to be problematic in the eyes of a buyer who has no experience, no exposure, that problem has gone to the magnitude of 10 through their lens, right? Because they have no gut feel for the business. So that's real one that's important. Another one that I'd like to ask and came up last week was, and then again, there's 36 key questions you have to ask the seller, but these are some a little bit off the beaten path, and but really get to the heart of the matter, which asks them, what happens if you get hit by a Pepsi truck tomorrow? We've talked about this, I think, in the past, because you want to understand, how is that business going to be, can that business run on its own, or to what extent? Meaning, if the seller says to you, oh, like if I, and a drop down is how much vacation you take. But if seller says, oh, if I disappear tomorrow, the business is in trouble, it either means that they are the business, or they micromanage the people, or they don't empower, or they have the wrong people. Okay.
Can I add real quick to that?
Add as much as you like.
What you just said, if that business was listed as an absentee-owned business, and you discovered what Richard just said, what happens when you're hit by a Pepsi truck, what happens, and the owner's telling you it's going to be a sorry, but a shit show if I'm out of here. That is not an absentee owned business. And you were just, well, screwed. Can I say that?
Yeah, yeah, you can. There's a lot more to it could say, and Sia will bleep it out. Yeah, and it's yeah, and that's another thing that's people are professing to find these businesses, selling complete BS that these are readily available. And are they available? Of course they're available, but they're not realistic. And I always like to cite the example. You have a job, you have a terrific job. You're working for, I don't know, a big tech company, and you're making a good living, and you figure you're going to invest in a couple of businesses, and you buy a few laundromats or whatever down the road. And they all tell you, oh, you buy this course and tell you absentee run businesses, and you have two people working at each location, and they're different people. And then what happens if 1, 2, or 12 of them quit all at the same time? Okay, what are you going to do? Just give up your day job and start washing clothes? I mean, you don't even know how to work the cash register, right? Like, I mean, you're screwed. There it is again. See ya.
There it is again.
Beep it out. But yes, it's just so misleading, and more than anything else, it's just not real.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't happen in numbers that are large enough to even make the claim. Could it happen 1 out of 1,000 times? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to go start looking for 1,000 businesses until you find one of them? By then I'll be in this business 98 years. I'll probably be dead by then, but it's like,
man.
It's just not going to happen.
There is no such thing as absentee owned. There just isn't. I think about the loan shops that I worked for in the past. If one new supervisor or one new employee comes in and upsets the team and changes the culture, I have been in those situations where the entire team walked out within a week.
Yes. And you know what? It's toxic, and it's so easy to avoid because I've seen it as well. And generally, you as a new owner, you will see that quickly because there's going to be one person, one employee, if it happens, who's going to be the loudmouth. They're going to start coming to you with stories or promises that weren't made, that they say were made. There's just one that sticks out. And again, it doesn't happen all the time by any means, but when it does happen, just with a little bit of common sense, a new owner can identify that individual quickly, okay? Because they start that BS from day one. And again, I want to qualify that this is not overly common, but it does happen. Make no mistake. And business buyers, they feel vulnerable. Oh my God, I need all these people. And they do at the beginning. And sometimes these employees leverage that. I need these people. What am I going to do? Understand, if you're a business buyer and any of that BS starts to bubble to the top shortly after you take over, you need to understand two things. Number one, that individual, no matter how you think you're going to reform them, the behavior and attitude that they demonstrate, that's as good as it's going to get. That's your best hope, okay? Because more than likely, that bad behavior and attitude problem is going to decline, and it's clearly going to infect other employees. And I've always looked at it and saying, if it's the wrong person, get them gone.
Yeah.
That's it. And you got to replace them because you can't be held hostage. And if you are, it sets the wrong tone for every other employee in the place, and you soon can become a doormat. So you've got to deal, that's part of business ownership. You've got to deal with tough decisions, and you got to make decisions. And sometimes it's products, sometimes it's service, sometimes it's staff, sometimes it's suppliers, whatever it is. You have to be prepared to make those tough decisions because they could throw your business off the rails pretty quickly.
And you're not going to do that if you think you can buy a business that's absentee owned and that you can just
forget about it. What did I say in New York? Forget about it. That's never, ever, ever going to happen. Ever.
I wish that would all stop. Some of the acronyms that I hear that's being marketed, I just wish it would all go away, but it's so preyed upon people, and suckers are lining up.
I was with someone for breakfast yesterday, and they're in a similar business. When I say similar business, information business, and they have an information product, if you will. It's mostly videos. I've seen parts of it. It's like, okay, it's like, and they were talking through, and it was more like friendly competition breakfast. It was just nice, had a coffee together, nothing more than that. They were a nice individual, and they sell a program for $15,000. Wow. And no support, no consulting, no guarantees. And they have a trade up program from that, I think, to like $25,000. And I'm looking at that and saying, you know what? it's just mind-boggling. But as long as you don't get into nonsense of misleading people about how they can go about doing it, people will make their decisions whether or not they want to spend that kind of money on information. That's up to the individual. But at the very least, what drives me crazy, there's people out there charging that amount of money, and the information itself is garbage or
Yes.
misleading. And I don't pay any attention. I see it all the time because it's you see it online or what have you, or it comes onto social media or my LinkedIn account. So I don't pay attention to it. I don't name names. It's their business. They could do whatever the hell they want. They can operate unscrupulously as they want. But it's really unfortunate for the individuals. And someone asked me, well, I think it was Mike Finger, when these things are available, what would you tell people who are thinking about spending all this kind of money with some of these and buying into these delusions and promises? And I don't know if you saw the post. They said, well, there's 3 rules. Number 1 is don't be an idiot, right?
Yes.
Number two, do your research, because if someone is going to sell you an information product and doesn't give you a very robust guarantee, then they can put whatever they want on their website. We give people a lifetime guarantee. I don't want their money if they're not thrilled. I said, and the 3rd rule is go back to rule 1. Don't be an idiot.
That's it.
And if they're going to be out there, well, you know what? God bless them.
If it's too easy for them to pull out a credit card and click the mouse for their computer, that's on them.
That's on them.
Throw away the mouse. Throw away the credit cards.
Bring in the Terminator. Get some rat poison. Throw away the mouse.
Take that money and hire a consultant, that's going to be knowledgeable and get you there. Versus
or light it on fire.
Yeah. Well, what's another question? Give us another one that one of your registrants of the webinar series has asked.
One of the most basic questions, and I've been in hundreds and hundreds of these meetings on the sell side and a buy side, but tons of them on the sell side. And the one question that astonishes me that people forget to ask, and I just wrote an article in Forbes about this, is that one of the first meetings with the seller, and they forget to ask them, how's business?
That's good to know.
Well, I mean, it's amazing how many people, and the reason why what you're looking for, the point is not the question, it's the answer. And when you go into these meetings, you want to be prepared for answers, to have comebacks for the answer. The reason why this question is so important is because you can get tremendous insight into how the seller manages his or her business. Meaning, when you say, how's business? And they say, it's good, or it's bad, or we're doing okay, or things are picking up. Well, here's my question to them. What the hell does that mean? Okay. I want a seller who says to me, oh yeah, business so far, we're up 4.2% for the first half of the year. Margins are off slightly, only about 0.5%, but we have a couple of things coming on board that should reverse that. We're looking at profitability. We're a little over 7% compared to last year. We've initiated the following new projects, and based on our measurement, here's where we see we are, and our marketing is yielding a better conversion rate. That's someone who has control of the business. That's someone who understands the details. They know what's going on. They don't deal in superlatives. Oh, it's good. It's great. It's like in the years when I used to have all these salespeople. Hey, how you doing? How are things going? Things are great. Okay. What does that mean? No, to me, it's how many orders do you have? Okay. Yeah. And how many are on the order log? It's quantifiable information. So by asking someone a question, a seller, as simple as how's business, it's not the question that's the issue. It's the answer. Okay.
How did you get there?
How did you get there? And it gives you great insight about how these individuals are managing their business, because the good, wonderful, terrible, average answer is entirely different than someone who tells you, can quote key metrics and exactly what's happening compared to the past. They are managing their business and or have the people that are assisting them to manage their business. So with all these seller questions, the questions are important. The answers are critical. And then you have to have the knowledge to know what is the follow-up question. For example, why are you selling? I'm retiring. Oh, great. He's retiring. End of story. No, not in this story. What are you planning to do after? Are you leaving the area? Are you relocating? Are you thinking about going into another business? Are your spouse, partner, whatever, are they retiring at the same time? And why do you want to ask that? Well, are you relocating? Well, yeah, we're moving to Virginia. Oh, wonderful. When are you leaving? Oh, this came up in a session, really. Oh, my wife said, I got to be out of there by Labor Day. And this is in May. And so I kept that in my mind. And I said, she said, oh yeah, as soon as we get an offer, we're putting the house on the market. Well, put an offer. I watched I was ready to put an offer, said I'm putting one in. I watched the house put on the market, waited another month, and shaved an enormous amount off the purchase price because I knew they had to. They were going to sell their house, move out. There was a trade-off with the transition period, but it was well worth it related to savings. So the question is. The question is important. The answer is critical, and having the preparation with the follow-up to find out what they're planning to do. Someone say, for whatever reason they're selling, you want to understand the true meaning. And so it's there's multi-tiers to all of this. So when people sit down to ask seller questions, what seem to be the obvious, everybody's asking that.
That's
You
right.
want to ask the questions that get to the meat.
Get to the meat. And
where's the beef?
Where's the beef? The details. And similar to that on the sell side, on the buy side, if you're going to use SBA financing, you have to put together projections, 3 years projections with assumptions. And I will help explain to buyers how to put together these projections. I can't do it for them because they should know how to do their projections. And I always will tell them there's a section for you to write the details, the assumptions, because the underwriter wants to know, well, how are you going to get there? Or why is it this expense on this line? Tell me more about it, and then sometimes they hand in the projections to me and they just leave it all blank. And generally that's a sign that they had someone do the projections for them or the business plan, and they don't know nothing about how to get there.
No, nothing.
If you don't know where you're going or how you're going to get there, what the hell are you doing?
What are you doing? And a couple of weeks ago, I was a manufacturer of automotive aftermarket products, somewhat proprietary, somewhat customized, but the factory is at capacity. Business profitable, not immensely, but profitable, relatively speaking. Nice, solid business, been around for a number of years, and they sell these aftermarket auto products, cars and trucks and what have you. And they put into their projections 5 to 9% growth over the next 5 years. And I said, well, that looks terrific, but you're at capacity in your production. So how are you going to grow this business? Yeah. Are you planning on just raising your prices from 5 to 9%? Oh no, we can't do that because it is still competitive. We have a somewhat unique item. I said, well, if you're at capacity and you can't produce more in the existing facility, you either have to raise your prices or you got to get another facility. And if you get another facility, startup costs, etc. So don't just pull projections out of your rear end.
Right.
The rationale is it's important to the underwriter, but it's more important to the buyer because it brings you back to breathing oxygen in the real world, not smoking crack.
And a lot of the assumptions to the buyer's projections were discovered when you, the buyer, were having that conversation with the seller, like Richard just mentored you. Ask the questions. How is business? What are the details? Well, now you take those details and you start to figure out, well, how is it going to look on my side, right?
Exactly. It's digging in. You want to believe what the seller has to say. You have to validate everything. And if you go into these meetings unprepared, not having done your initial research, if you don't have the right questions, know what answers to look for, and have your follow-up questions ready, then you know what? Here's what happens. You're just going to spend a whole lot of time looking for businesses, and your chances are you're either never going to buy one or you're going to buy the wrong one.
That's right. Guess what time it is, Richard?
Who's the duper?
Who's the duper?
Can't wait.
Not you. Let's see who the duper is.
You never know. Okay.
I could be the duper.
Or me, easily. I'm a duper every day. At least once.
Oh, I think the little who. All right.
I still laugh at the. Yeah.
I know. Well, this
never gets old.
So, who's the duper? Where we like to just change the subject for a moment before we wrap up and get out of here. I mentioned our last show, Richard, that every time we talk about buying a business, my smartphone picks up everything as to what we're talking about. And then in the evening, when I want to catch up on some social media, I'm just loaded with ads about how to buy a business. I have to say, I've never found your ad in my Facebook. So good news is I don't think you're spending ad because you're just word of mouth referrals. So that's a compliment.
Yeah, we promote the webinars or whatever. Yeah, but I'm not getting busy with all this
That's right.
BS ads online. Yeah,
But
that
let's
aren't working.
put up this ad that we came across because this is our
Put on my
Who's the
glasses
Dupa?
here.
Who's the Dupa segment.
Okay, now I could
Um,
see.
I took off, who put it up and such, but this is the Facebook ad. Buy a profitable laundromat. My gosh, in 15 days, Richard, and no experience required. I was like, damn, this is really good. And 271 people within the first hour liked this, which means they want to learn more, which is going to lead them down the path to some kind of course to pay for to help you buy a profitable laundromat in just 15 days, no experience required, and you will have financial wealth and freedom, Richard. What do you think about that? Who's the dupa?
Well, first of all, there's 272 idiots. So you can call them dupa. The 271 that liked it and the one who wrote it or who's behind it. Okay, those are the dupas. So it's not who is the dupa, it's who are the dupas because it's all of them. It's like this is like an idiot convention. Okay, anybody who believes this is a certified idiot, and anybody who puts this out is worse. Okay, because it's not true. It's not going to happen. Could it happen 1 out of 10,000 times? Maybe. You buy a complete piece of crap business in 15 days. What the hell are you going to? What are you going to get in 15 days? What are you going to get in 15 days?
A lot of quarters. Didn't you say that?
Well, maybe. I mean, you might, or you might not get any. That's the reality. You might not get any. And so you can't do any part of this process in 15 days. I mean, you're going to organize the price. It could take you 15 days to organize your money to get the transfer done. You think you're going to write up legal documents for the agreement back and forth in 15 days? So who's the dupa? 272 idiots and including the dupa who wrote this. That's my assessment, and I'm sorry that I can't be a little more assertive.
I can't even get my own laundry done in 15 days.
No, and yeah, if I gave it to my kid to get the laundry done, it would be 115 days. So you're right. It's crazy.
Yes.
That's why you can't pay attention to it.
And
It's like
that's
can't pay attention.
That's going viral on Facebook.
It's all over the place.
But
I knew we were going to be talking something. You mentioned something about a laundromat in advance, and we talked about this. I came across this guy, and I have my glass. I wrote it down. His name is Mark Casordos, I think.
Yes.
Mark. I don't know if it's Sordos or Casordos, Cordos.
Yeah.
And I read it, and I think I got a link to him from you potentially during the week.
You did. Yeah.
And I started looking at some of this stuff. And you want to know something? If there's anybody who's listening, you're interested in buying a laundromat or even thinking about it, find this guy because he, like me, like you, okay, he actually breathes oxygen from planet Earth.
That's
and
right.
He works in the real world, practical real world advice. Okay. He's not smoking crack. And so I would suggest anybody who's interested, find this guy, and maybe we can put it up at some point or the next show because he's for real. He's one of these guys. If he's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And he was very impressive. I haven't spoken to him, but I was really impressed by what he had put out there.
We will get him on this show because I have him as a guest actually on May 1st, right after your webinar on my Dial In with Deb audio.
That's how we saw him. That's how I saw it. Right. Okay.
And he just published a book. It's on Amazon. The Laundromat Bible is what it's called. Oh my gosh. I sent him that ad that we just saw, and he's got something to say about it, and you'll probably hear it on the Dial In with Deb audio show, but we will get him on this Business Buying Banter.
Beautiful.
I'm telling you, he's just like you. He's got a few comments to say about.
I'm very sorry I have a lot of pity for him if he's just like me. I got an ad, and I get some of the same things that I get these ads because of a result of what we're talking about. I guess they're always snooping on us, right? And so I had one that was, I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. It was from another self-anointed guru, and the proposition there was buy a $250,000 a year cash flowing business in 19 days. No money down.
Nice.
I'll tell you what, I should have responded to that individual. I said, why don't you do this? You find the business, that you think can happen, and show me their building, and I'm going to eat their building brick by brick. If that happens, what you say can happen.
Can I get my money back if it takes 20 days and not the 19 as
You
promised?
you can't get your money back ever, ever. When you buy these information products, ever. I mean, I saw one person who has like a 30-day refund, I think it was. I mean, I've always said I give people forever.
Mm-hmm.
We've sold over 100,000 copies. You know how many refunds we've given over years?
How many
64
refunds?
Out of over 100,000.
Damn! Wow. So
Like,
you're on your word.
It's 0.000, I think 0.064.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's almost unbelievable because you know what? There's value, and when you put into words what the truth, people respect that. There's some who've never bought a business, no doubt. Tens of thousands who have 48,000 plus, I think, at this point, out of the the last audit. But I mean, if you provide people with value, they're going to appreciate it.
That's right. So as we wrap up our show here, you're providing that value with your webinar series. And Sia will put up the QR code for those that are still hanging around toward the end of the show here. May 1st.
You're going to join? I hope you're going to be there because there's always SBA questions. We need the legit guru on there to answer them. That would be you.
And you know why I like to be on there is because some of the questions presented, I'm actually learning a lot from you, Richard, because SBA does not have to be the only source to buy a business. There are other funding ways, and you help buyers recognize that. I like to hear about that because sometimes some of the businesses you can get funding through other rounds besides SBA, right?
Oh, absolutely. If the drive and the need and the desire is to acquire business, there's lots of options available. None of them are delusional, right? This concept of buying businesses for no money down, but there are other options that exist, and we can talk about those at a certain time. But I'm glad you sit in with us so that you could learn, but also are able to dispense your years of advice for those individuals that are looking go down the road to SBA financing. And as a plug, we know each other for a little while now, and anybody who's looking to SBA financing, if you don't call Deb to at least understand what's involved, then you should probably have your head examined. I mean, you know your stuff inside out, and at least inform yourself. Get the advice from the right people, and then decide.
Oh, thank you. Yes. It just comes from the experience of working at various banks, all the different sizes, and realizing I was stuck in one credit box that I thought, I got to get the hell out of here.
You got to get out of
there.
Be
able to source several places, especially with all these changes that are going on. So yes, May 1st, ladies and gentlemen, Richard's webinar series and Business Buying Banter. We're going to be moving into the summer months and going every 2 weeks just because there are more vacations and people tend to slow down a little bit with online activity, and to allow the webinar series to kind of filter in when we're not doing Business Buying Banter, which I'm grateful for because we're serving the community of aspiring buyers, and there's
serving. Yes, there's so many. We're serving them. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we should do a selling a business buying banter show.
I have I was going to write a course years ago because I used to tell people, well, what about, do you have a course on selling a business? I said, yeah, take the course, hold it up in the mirror. It's the opposite.
Are you funny? Oh man.
No, that's quite involved, but it's so busy with buyers. But I'd actually mapped out, and I have mapped out, some of the ideas related to selling, but I really like to focus on the buy side because you change a lot of lives, and we have. I mean, it's sure on the sell side, but on the buy side, really exponentially. People like hopes, dreams, and aspirations coming true. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. You sit back and watch magic happen, And
I love it. You're ending the show on a positive note, as we should. So, all right. Well, that's it for Business Buying Banter, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining Richard Parker and I. Check out richardparker.com for the webinar. If you need funding for buying a business, debcurtis.com. And we thank you for your support. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and like our episode because we support small businesses and we are small business owners just as much. So your support is greatly appreciated. Richard, That's all for us this week, right?
That's right. Thanks, Deb. Go with God. We'll see you soon.
Go with God.
Go with God. Bye, Deb.
Bye.